Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Seb.
I'm Mike.
I'm Doug.
And I'm Lewis.
On today's episode, chock full with good content, we're going to talk about the highlights from the most recent Tesla earnings call. We're going to talk about the introduction of the Cybercab and the recall of the Cybertruck. We're going to talk about the new Model 3 performance and Tesla licensing FSD. Episode 63 starts now. Hello. Good to see you guys. In true Tesla fashion, we're starting late, but it's very nice to see
Tesla
you.
time. Tesla time.
I know. Doug, turn up the EDM.
Yeah.
Why did we start late, Seb?
Can't disclose that. I think somebody had to reboot their machine.
Damn.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
all right, chock full of nuts.
Well, I mean, I'm not kidding, right? There's lots of good stuff that came
There
out of the
is.
earnings call.
There is.
Results, maybe not so positive. We'll dig into that in a little bit. But catch me up. What's new, guys? Doug, I know you're kind of dying to talk about the new Cybercab announcement, but what else is new?
What's new with Tesla?
Yeah, what's going on?
Well, I mean, let's start with Cybercab. There's nothing so special about it except that it's a name that that Elon dropped during the call, right? We've all been informally calling it the robotaxi. I guess they've been calling it robotaxi, right? And then it's funny because it calls back to there's like a random time where Elon was walking with someone and someone had a camera going, and Elon mentioned the Model X, and that was the first time anyone heard the Model X, and what would that be? And it would be, like a crossover SUV type thing. And so he's referred to the robotaxi as a cybercab. And the thing about it is, okay, is that it's just it's a 2C name, or does it tell us something about what this vehicle is? Like, does it relate to the Cybertruck? Does it mean, is the thing going to be stainless steel? Is it going to have styling that looks like the Cybertruck? I think he said he wants the future to look like the future. So he wants this thing to look futuristic. We saw the drawings out of the Isaacson Isaacson book, which to me weren't that great, right?
Three-wheel go-kart. Yeah.
It looked
First
like
of
a
all,
little- yeah.
the future as envisioned in the 1980s is not the future.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I couldn't hold it in because
Yeah. And I'll reiterate also that future was a dystopian future, right?
right.
Very
and
much so.
So I don't know, I don't know really what Elon has in mind, but it does feel a little bit juvenile, right? So to me, form should follow function, and so if they're able to do that, then maybe it'll be okay. But the drawings we saw to me don't look so great. It looks like a little three-wheeled two-seater. A two-seater maybe does make sense in terms of efficiency or something, but anyway, just calling it Cybercab, does it mean it's going to be stainless steel? Does it mean, we would expect it would have things like the 48 volt architecture.
Is it bullet resistant? I'm sorry.
Yeah, to me, that's the kind of thing that's a waste.
More
But
about
if
the
it's
balls
using
hitting
the
the window,
same
yeah.
stainless steel, then, that's just something that comes along with it. So, yeah, I don't know. It's very clear that Tesla is, or at least Elon is putting most of the eggs in that basket. And he pretty much said, if you don't believe in Tesla autonomy, you probably shouldn't be an investor in Tesla, which is the kind of thing he's said in the past, really. Are you good enough? Are you good enough to be an investor in Tesla? Do you want to be part of that club? So wait, Seb, you had something.
Well, I have to ask a question because I missed most of the earnings call just because I've been busy. So are they saying that the Cybercab and the Model 2, is that going to be the same vehicle? Is the Cybercab a different vehicle? I guess that's the part that a lot of people may be wondering about, right? So what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so clear. Mike and I talked about it on the previous show because there was, the media trying to interpret rumors. There's a sense that is the Model 2, or what we've been calling that lower cost vehicle, is that canceled? My sense is it's maybe the same thing, like they're both at the same time, but it is a bit of a reversal in that, again, from the Isaacson book, we got the sense that, people were able to convince Elon that, okay, let's make it the same platform, but we'll get the lower cost vehicle out sooner. I'm not, but it's unclear to me if it is, like, what's the order? Like, what's happening, and is that Cybercab, is that essentially something without a steering wheel? My guess is they're still on the same platform. They're probably both starting at the same time. But one of the things that also seemed to change is that it's going to come out sooner, perhaps by the end of this year or next year. I doubt that's going to happen, but that's the fire that Elon lights under his employees, partially by firing a bunch of them.
10%, that's a few.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm not really sure. Another thing is that it's going to be on the same production line as the 3 and the Y. So does that mean that perhaps they've scaled back some of the newness or revolutionariness?
The stainless steel and all the other, the panels, because you would think it's not going to look like, originally the early rumors were like Model 2 is going to look a lot like the Cybertruck, just scaled down, right? And I agree, like, if we're now talking about it's going to be Model 3, Model Y production line, stuff like that.
Go back further, Lewis. I mean, the original Cybercab robotaxi was going to be your Model 3s off lease, which is why you couldn't buy your Model 3 off lease.
Good point.
So, I mean, it's a sea change, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah,
it's fair. It's a sea to change.
I would hope, though, that it would at least be an a aerodynamic design, which the Cybertruck does not really evoke. So, I mean, you want it to be efficient.
Why? If it's a taxi cab thingy bob, it's going to be in town primarily. I mean, aerodynamics are not that much of a concern. Passenger capacity is a concern. Luggage is a concern.
I would think if you want it to be lower cost and you can get away with fewer cells, then or less battery capacity, you can say.
There you go. Maybe you can run on hydrogen.
Come on. Let's stay on topic here. you want it to be more efficient, and to me, I'm not sold on the boxiness of the Cybertruck. So. But does it just turn into a cheaper Model 3? Like, is it essentially a Model 3 that's sort of stripped out or something?
I could see that on the same line easy enough. What I can't see is them building a Model 2, whatever, and you see my air quotes, whatever a Model 2 is, on the same line as a 3. That, in my mind, that would be very disruptive to the workflow. You tend to tune your lines to make assemblies quick, easy, and optimized. And switching models midstream strikes me as a bit of a bad idea.
Yeah, but I guess what do we think as far as like the innovation in the Cybertruck that we'd expect to be pulled down? Like the 48 volt, for example, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Trying to think, like, there was a lot of innovation in, not having to paint, in, potentially streamlining, with your gigacastings, all the other kind of stuff, reducing, parts for assembly, stuff like that. So sure. I'm kind of wondering what else you guys think we're going to see in the Model 2 / Cybercab.
4-wheel steering would be nice. That'd be awesome in a cab to be able to maneuver in and out of really tight parking areas on like street parking and whatnot.
Probably tough to do at that lower price point, right? I think for me and Mike, I feel like I asked you that question a couple of podcasts ago. What's going to be so materially different about the Model 2 compared to the 3 that would allow them to sell it at a much lower price, right? Like, what other levers? It's the battery capacity. couple other things. But
Your battery capacity would be one, but I think if you could do a gigacasting for the whole chassis, I think that'd be a second one. Because right now you got a front and back casting and the batteries in the middle.
I think if it is a smaller vehicle, particularly if it's like a two-seater type thing, that might be something they can get away with. I tend to think four-wheel steering becomes less necessary if the thing is pretty small. But steer-by-wire might still make some sense in terms of
less
cost.
parts, less stuff.
Fewer parts, yes.
And by smaller, you're thinking BMW i3 smaller?
Is that really smaller?
It's pretty small.
It's pretty small.
It's short. Yeah, I would guess a shorter wheelbase. And then that gives you less space for batteries too, unless you stack them up.
Fewer space. No, I'm sorry. This joke is going too far. Just kidding.
It's Stannis Baratheon. If it's countable, it's fewer.
I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, it's a good grammar lesson.
Yeah.
The other question I have, so slightly changing topics, right? One question about the Cybercab is what kind of vehicle is it? The other question, and I want to go to Lewis, is part of it is the software, right? They showed off the app. It was a nice prototype. It's probably going to look pretty close when it's released to what they've shown in those pictures because they have a tendency to do that. But I've seen tons of posts on Reddit where people used summon in a parking lot at the grocery store and the thing hits the curb or it just hits another car. So here's the question, Lewis. First of all, what do we think about the trajectory of FSD to make it really reliable that it could drive by itself? But also, would you have your car just driving around like that, completely unsupervised? I would be scared to let it drive through my town.
Yeah. So, I definitely would. I'm with you. I would be scared as well. I don't expect them to do robotaxi where it's people's cars immediately. I know that's the goal. The plan is that, your own car, you can put it into the fleet. I imagine, I don't know. There's got to be some restrictions and limitations because as we see right now, even with FSD, you're going to have to restrict amount of parking lots or other things that it can drive into, right? It's probably going to have to be, you can only go to the street, right? To minimize hitting things. Is FSD going to be good enough and how soon? I mean, we've already done our predictions, right? I think we're a few years away at least.
To me, there are two main aspects of it. It's for your own vehicle, right? It's your stuff and how much you're able to tolerate people messing up your car. We've already on TMC seen plenty of horror stories with people that lease or rent their cars
on
out
Turo.
on Turo.
Yeah.
The other thing is liability. The only way robotaxi or Cybercab or any of this works is Tesla taking that liability. So it's their software. And once Tesla is willing to do that, we'll see if that makes sense. To shift just a little bit, Mercedes is supposedly having their autonomous vehicle, which is certified level 3 on a very limited amount of situations where you don't have to look at the road. Maybe one of you guys know a little better, but you would think that only works if Mercedes is willing to take liability in that instance.
Last year, we had a podcast. We talked about this last year when it first came up, and Mercedes announced then they were going to take liability. And I haven't seen anything since then to say otherwise.
Right. So the thing about it needs to be so clearly defined without being a legal mess. And so Tesla would have to do something similar. And honestly, so within the Tesla community, and if you look at Twitter, which is primarily, Tesla fans, overwhelmingly, it used to be more balanced. It's not anymore. They're upset that Mercedes gets to claim this because it's such a minor thing in their estimation. And I would expect, I feel pretty good about FSD on the highway. I would like Tesla to do something similar. Okay, define some strict parameters. And already, like right now, it's bugging me way too much, right? You know, less than 30 miles an hour on specified highways, and put it in the software. You don't have to look at the screen right now, or whatever. And Tesla's taking liability. That's the part I don't expect Tesla to do. Tesla, I think, is so much on passing the buck in terms of the liability. But if it could, like maybe, and this is why competition is good, maybe with Mercedes doing the step, I feel like Tesla's already there, and they just need to be ready to say, okay, we'll take the liability in this space. And just what needs to be clear is that we're in those conditions. Then, you know, Tesla should be able to do that. It's just that whenever there's an accident or whatever, you know, Tesla makes a point of it not being an FSD, or you're supposed to be in control. If Tesla could, you know, okay, make that step now, if you believe in it so much, go ahead and take the liability, you know, go ahead and do it. But, you know, we need to know when those times are. And so they can't, you know, go switching it on as, oh, well, you were supposed to be in control. So, I mean, we'll see. What do you guys think about that?
I would agree. Tesla has a running history of not taking responsibility. I think they're going to start feeling the pressure now that Mercedes has got the official certification for level 3. I mean, shareholders being what shareholders are going to kind of push that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that impressive as far as, like, I agree with you, Doug. I think Tesla's at the same point as where Mercedes is with, yeah, under the conditions of driving slow on a highway. Like, yeah, I actually trust my car. I trust FSD to do that effectively. So as you know, the liability being the concern, I mean, I definitely think I don't know that they're going to be willing to do it as early as Mercedes. Or obviously they weren't as early as Mercedes, but like, I don't think they're going to be willing to do it soon after just because Mercedes did it. I think they're going to, I think they're going to keep doing what they plan. So will we see that kind of, you know, liability claim this year? Probably not, would be my guess from Tesla. I think they're going to keep pushing for improving FSD in a wider range, right? Like most of their work that they're doing is not on highway at this point, right? It's all city driving. You know, yeah, Ethan tweeted at us, commented in the chat. I don't know. I don't think Tesla feels any pressure based on this announcement. I agree with you, Ethan. I don't think Tesla, I mean, there are some people that'll probably care more about how the press is portraying it. So I definitely think Tesla will react in that way, but I don't think they're like, oh man, Mercedes did this, we need to do this too. Like,
well, I don't think that's entirely true, Lewis, because first they said they were going to not do the small version of the Tesla, you know, version 2 or whatever you want to call it. All of a sudden they backed out of that and said, oh yes, we're going to do it, but it's going to be a robotaxi. You know, something pushed them that other direction. And all of a sudden Mercedes pops up and says, hey, guess what, guys? We're certified level 3.
Well, I think what pushed them in that direction was the fact that the sales are down and just the reality of the macro environment right now for EVs. So they're trying to recover faster, getting the lower price vehicles. They've been cutting their own prices. I would say one thing about it is, and that would be difficult for Tesla to do what I was suggesting in terms of, like having those strictly defined moments, is that already the promise has been more than what has been delivered. So for them to like say, oh, it's only this, there's only this particular set of circumstances and now you don't have to look away. It feels to me that they just have to do, I mean, there could be the perception that they just need to do everything all at once because that's what they promised years ago. And for them to define a specific set of circumstances might admit too much that they're not actually where they're supposed to be.
Yes, and I would say Tesla's been unique out of all the automakers in that they oversold the level of autonomy and at the same time kind of chastised people that got stuck in accidents or other situations and kind of pointed at them saying, well, I mean, it's your fault. You shouldn't have maybe used it or trusted it too much. And at the same time, how long has it been called full self-driving? When did that term come out? Maybe
I mean, it came out in response to autopilot not being what autopilot was supposed to be, and it's it's been used so long that the words have no meaning, right?
Yes.
Full self-driving.
Supervised.
Right.
Yeah, and now it's supervised. It's like that's like within the name now is a contradiction, because full self-driving should mean that it is driving on its own and it doesn't need to be supervised. So
it drives like a teenager.
I mean, that's a conundrum of their own making.
Now, here's a feature that would make me want to use the Cybercab, though. Imagine you got the app pulled up, you had a red light, and there's a launch button. Wouldn't that be awesome in the Cyber Beast or the Plaid? And you can just gun it.
Have a Plaid cab.
Plaid cab.
What if they charge you like $5 every time you hit the button?
Yeah,
Would
might
you
be
still
worth
hit
it once or twice.
Would you still hit it?
That's good. Well, speaking of performance, they just not really announced with great fanfare, I would say, but there's definitely been a couple of new commercials on YouTube I saw. There's been emails. I think, Doug, they're coming after you.
It's on their website.
Ask you to upgrade. It's on the website. Long story short, new Model 3 performance is out. We talked about it a few times, right? When the new version of the Model 3, the Highland codename, came out, we knew the performance hadn't been announced at the time. Now it's out. So what do you guys think? Was it worth the wait? How does it look to you? What's everybody thinking?
I will say that, so as far as I know, I don't think any actual deliveries has happened. We've seen test drives from people like Marcus Brownlee and others, and you can order it now.
Yes, you can.
I don't know that anyone has necessarily gotten it yet. It has, we've seen bits before, like of like the special seats that it might have.
It's ventilated seats now.
Well, that ventilated seats came along with just the upgrade. Like that was the like I test drove like a couple months ago, and I had the ventilated seats. But these seats have more bolstering. They're basically sporty seats. They have like the Plaid, which basically looks like Star Wars going into hyperspace.
Does not look like the Plaid.
No.
It is
ludicrous.
It is
ludicrous mode.
Ludicrous
I'm
speed.
sorry. Yeah, I misspoke. It looks like ludicrous.
Get your distortion field out.
Which is Spaceballs' version of Star Wars making them jump to hyperspace. And they put that. To me, that looks a little goofy. Actually, it's like inset in the seat.
Yeah.
But I think they said 0 to 60 in 2.9, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
I did, Seb alluded to it. I did get an email this morning. They're really trying to sell those cars, and I did a test drive like some months ago, and they're like, "Hey, what do you think?"
I feel very shamed. I've got two Model 3s. I didn't get an email.
Well, specifically, I did a test drive of the new one, and they're still trying to sell it to me. And my conclusion at the time was it's nice, especially the ventilated seats, but not different enough from my existing car. And even right now, I like FSD. I use it quite a bit, but I still haven't gotten what I paid for with FSD in terms of the promise. And it was directly asked at this earnings call, would you have a permanent, transferable FSD? And Elon just straight up said no. So even though they've done it at least twice now, allowing you to transfer FSD. So yeah, if I'm not able to transfer FSD, and even considering the performance, I think I would want my FSD. So we'll see. But anyway, it looks good. I'm not sure there's much else to say about it. It looks good. The performance is good.
Oh, come on. They got a whole page of stuff about it. They've got new improved suspension. They've got new improved quietness on the doors.
And they put out a commercial and stuff, and that whole team,
they did.
That whole advertising team has since been laid off.
Fired.
Been axed, yeah. Thanks for your work. Appreciate it.
It's I was just gonna say it's funny on Twitter, like once it was announced they're laid off, everybody, what is up with these people? Like everybody was saying, oh yeah, they were crappy ads anyway. They were so generic. And even Elon was like, yeah, it looked like you're advertising any car as opposed to a Tesla. It's got to be special.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except they're using it.
Okay, yeah, but you're using it, and when it first showed up, the folks are like, oh, that looks great, and then you find out those people are fired. Well, they didn't do such a great job anyway.
Oh, the life of a fanboy.
Yeah, that's a little harsh, huh?
The mob can be fickle.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you come here to TMC for the truth.
Let's not go that far. we do what we can, but we're not. Let's not call ourselves the truth. We're all doing what we're all trying to figure out the truth. We just try to be honest about it.
Tease it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, you certainly have some good appreciation for gas cars, right? So I think somebody mentioned there's a reviewer, I think it was Jason Camisa, maybe getting his name wrong, but didn't he say that now that the new Model 3 Performance is out, there's no need anymore for the BMW M3? That sounded like a pretty big statement.
That's
to
a
me,
pretty
so-
bold statement. But yeah, different strokes, different folks. I mean, there are people that really like pure speed, and Tesla can deliver that in spades. I mean, look at Lewis. He's got
like
some
it.
plaid. He gets out there and just tears things up, despite what he says. But there's also the other side of the coin where people really enjoy the hands-on, shift the shifter,
Rolling through
hear
the
the
gears, that's the
noise.
thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I do
it's
miss my stick shift.
I can imagine. I mean, and
I
I would miss the noise of really
Yeah.
winding up, getting some revs out of the motor. So it really depends what you want out of it. I don't think it's the end of the M3. Hardly. It may change the M3. It may not. Germans are kind of fickle about that.
I think I take the Jay Leno approach for that. There'll be space for those cars for a while. A lot of those sports cars are becoming automatics these days, which is
That's
terrible
true.
to me.
6, 7,
And-
8 speeds. Yeah.
And even if they are, even if they have discrete gears to shift into, it's happening automatically with the computer. So a lot of that involvement, the engagement of driving, and you're like already that third pedal's gone, right? And maybe you're paddle shifting. So I don't know, once you've gone that far, I think probably the Model 3 might be better than that M3, So it's a preference thing, certainly. My own experience was, I had a Miata for many years. Of course, it's not an M3, but it's a really fun car for the price. And I got that BMW i3, and then all of a sudden a year later, I'm like, gee, I haven't driven that Miata, because that little i3 actually had better performance, than the Miata. Then again, when I got the Miata ready to sell, I'm like, man, this is a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to roll through those gears. So,
Yeah.
it's as long as they're still making them, make them more expensive. Yeah, we're talking about the future. Make it a thing that is sort of specialized. But the Model 3 is pretty good, I'm sure. I mean, I'm happy again with my own car, which is years old, and it beats everything else off the line. Most of the cars when it comes to a stop sign. I mean, a stoplight. So.
Yeah, I'm sure it's an amazing car. I would love to test drive it once they actually become available. Although Tesla, I think, stopped doing test drives of the performance versions at the local stores, but I'll see if I can maybe get a ride.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely interested to test drive the performance. Performance Model 3. If I'm already driving Model 3 and you're trying to convince me to get a new one, come on,
Yeah.
let me drive it.
Well, if you do end up buying one, we definitely want a review from you. Like we said, new performance version not shipping yet. However, the Cybertruck, I think they've made around a couple of thousand, right, that are out in the field with real people. And something wasn't quite right with the accelerator, right? Like what was going on there?
I mean, that's why we know that there are a few thousand out there. To me, that's the most interesting part of this recall. There's a recall of Cybertruck and they blamed it on an unapproved something. I don't know, unapproved some material used on the accelerator, and it's two materials. There's like a sort of a chromey bit on top of.
It's adhesive though, right? I mean, it's a chrome pedal, which they have in all the performance versions. That looks like it's just glued to the actual.
Yeah, they put a rivet or something to fix it, right?
Well, but the glue wasn't working because of something they blamed on somebody else. Right?
Of course.
So the fix was just sticking a rivet on there. It's not exactly pretty. It's a good, quick and dirty fix. I would have thought they would have added a little piece of cosmetics, like, I don't know, just put a sticker or something on top of that rivet, because it doesn't look that great, but it works. It calls back to the issues with floor mats. I had my first car I owned was a already old Ford Escort. It had some aftermarket floor mats just slid all over the place.
The performance floor mats?
They were
They had stripes.
Walmart performance floor mats or something. They kind of slid around, and they could now in those days the accelerator the connective bit went up, and it wasn't already on the floor, but it was possible to get the accelerator pinned underneath the floor mat, which very famously happened with, I think, a Toyota Prius, and some people died with that. So now this wouldn't be so much of an issue with the Cybertruck. It's all electronic. It's all drive by wire in terms of the accelerator and the brake. So very easily you can step on the brake, and that will override the command from the accelerator, as opposed to the thing actually fighting, right? The engine going, and then you're stepping on the brakes, and you might not have enough braking authority to overcome the engine in the path. So as far as I know, nothing really happened. But it was an important thing to fix. And there was an official recall about it, and easy fix. And again, to me, the most interesting part is we learned the actual numbers. I don't remember exactly, 3,800 something, which is right in line with what we were predicting. We all said for Q1, it would be less than 10K and above 1,000, say. And we probably all landed around 4,000, and that's what they did. And they paused deliveries, and I guess now they can continue those deliveries. And the aerial photography of Texas, we see there are a bunch of Cybertrucks ready to go. So I think it's overall pretty positive in terms of what you'd expect from their production ramp. So
yeah, I saw my first one on the road maybe a couple of weeks ago. It was interesting to see, because I think you guys went to your local Tesla dealership, and I think, Doug, you looked at it in person a while ago.
That was before the delivery event.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it yet, so I saw it on the road. I also see lots of Rivian, by the way, at the moment. I think they've really ramped up their production, so it's just cool to see. Overall, as someone who's been following Tesla for so long, it is kind of nice to see different EVs on the road now. Alrighty, we talked about FSD. There's one more thing that we wanted to get into, which is the fact that Tesla either announced or is interested in licensing FSD to other manufacturers. So, Lewis, any hypotheses on what's behind that and who may be lined up to license it?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, what they talked about on the earnings call, I believe primarily because, they're trying to bounce back from the sales numbers going down, and the stock not doing great and other things. So they gotta put out all the good news they possibly can. And so I mean, I think it is good news. We kind of expected it. We kind of had been rumored about they're going to try to license it out. My guess is which major automaker is Ford, just because they've had such a close relationship before, and there's been talking about it. I don't think GM would do it. I don't think Tesla would sell it to GM due to the relationship there. And you've got all the Cruise stuff and all that other nonsense going on. So I feel like VW is not buying into the self-driving yet because of their problems they've run into. So just looking at the landscape, to me, like Ford makes the most sense. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
It is
The
interesting.
yeah, go for it, Doug.
Yeah, I would say, Ford, yeah, definitely in terms of the relationship with I almost said Chris Farley, whatever, Jim Farley.
It's his
Yeah, it's his
cousin.
Cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great resemblance. Yeah, so Ford already has their Blue Cruise, right? It sounds like Blue's Clues. And so I could see them doing it on the highway. The fact that Elon said major automaker, if it wasn't that, I would say, Rivian is the one that's in the best position to make use of it. Rivian already has a bunch of cameras around. Rivian is positioned to do over-the-air updates. Rivian seems fairly nimble with their software. It took them, like, they had some software issues when they started, but they're sort of catching up. And honestly, Tesla did too when they were starting with the Model S. So they'd be in a position. But the fact that he said major, like, you can't, by no stretch is Rivian a major automaker.
I think it's Fisker, actually.
Yeah. Are they still a company for the third time? Are they?
I think they're still around, but but there's no way. Like, again, the same reasons it's not GM. Elon is he has his personality quirks, and he has a long memory, and he has a thin skin, and so there's no way it would be Rivian, just like it wouldn't be GM. And but Ford. They say the right things and make
they kiss the ring.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Is there any? I mean, I don't know if there's any animosity with Rivian. They are a competitor. They are a lot of former Tesla people, and I kind of feel like Rivian steals the Cybertruck's thunder, especially after the reveal of the R2 and R3. I think a lot more people are probably actually interested in those vehicles than the Cybertruck, even though there's such a huge pent up demand for the Cybertruck of people that ordered it 4 years ago, still waiting for their vehicles. But
I see a lot of Rivians around by me, by the way, and I'm in Tesla land, right? Like I'm where the factory, the headquarters is, and yet I still see a lot of Rivians. Not to say I don't see a lot of Teslas. I've seen a number of Cybertrucks, but in my specific neighborhood, there are a number of Teslas, like S's and Y's and stuff. There's no Cybertruck in my immediate neighborhood. The next neighborhood over has one, but there's a shitload of Rivians. I see R1s all over the place.
Well, I would say that in terms of somebody, if they wanted an electric truck and they actually wanted to do truck things, I think the Rivian, got there. And I think that satisfies a lot of what people wanted.
There's two things to consider, though. You've got the Rivian truck, and then you got the Rivian suburban type truck.
The R1S.
SUV.
Yes.
You got,
And I see a lot of that SUV.
I see the SUV everywhere.
I see more SUV than I do the truck.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd say it's the opposite here.
Okay.
More truck, more pure truck.
Well, I guess you're more in truck land, whereas here, let's say here, it's the Bay Area, but also I've seen them on the East Coast. It's more your people mover, and the R1S does that, the soccer mom thing. So yeah, I mean, people are trying to do that with the Cybertruck, and that's just overkill, and and all that. If you don't need a truck space, you'd rather that to be the truck bed, you'd rather that to be seating.
Well, in our case, we've had soccer teams, we've got dogs to move around. I mean, we don't need a truck. We need the enclosed space.
Right. And the Y and the X kind of struggle with that third row.
A bit. I mean, we looked at the Y with the third row and just decided, too much trouble to use. But no, I've got my $100 in for an R2. We'll see what comes of that. And I will claim I was looking at the bigger Rivian. I've looked on and off several times now. So
Yeah.
hard to say what might motivate me.
Well, 2026 for those R2s and R3s.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's a ways off.
It's a little ways off. So,
And to be fair, Cybertruck just started delivering a few months ago.
Yep.
It's still
Yep.
ramping production. So I'll be interested to see how they get to, right? Q1, they did what we said, almost 4,000, high 3,000. So be curious to see, how long does that, keep going? Does it hockey stick up a little bit for a while before it plateaus? Or like you said, did Rivian kind of steal their thunder? Because there was no competition to the Cybertruck. And then from the time they originally wanted to build it, and then there was a crap load before they ever got to deliver it.
Yeah, I think the F-150 Lightning stole the thunder. Actually,
I think they stumbled. Right, I feel like the F-150 basically dropped the ball because they could have been.
But they were first
dominant.
to market. They were first to market, but you're right. They've kind of screwed things up.
I don't see them. Right, like they aren't sell. They're either taking too long to make them, or there's too many problems, or I don't know what it is. I just don't see F-150 Lightnings like I do Rivians.
The main thing with the F-150 Lightning was the dealer markup, and they just really took advantage. Tesla was the first to unveil, to announce the Cybertruck. It wasn't what people were expecting. It was pretty crazy, but that appealed to a lot of people. But then, the announcement of the F-150 and then the Rivian, and both those were managed to deliver before the Cybertruck. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the F-150 stumbled in that the pricing got crazy because of dealer markups, because, they do what they want.
Maybe one of you guys have heard this, but I'll kind of throw it out there. On the Lightning, I read a couple different places that people have gone to a dealer to get something done to their Lightning, not the dealer they bought the truck from, and the dealer says, nope, I can't touch it. I didn't sell it to you.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me.
That's insane. That's insanity. The badge says Ford. Your sign says Ford.
Well, I actually think you guys are touching on something important, which may be getting lost these days because buyers now have options. Right, you got
quite a few options.
Kia. There's tons of EVs on the road now. Right, that's very different from 10 years ago when it was basically just
even 4 years ago. I think. I mean,
exactly. So I think as an owner, one of the innovations Tesla has always had is how they've changed the experience of buying the car. Right, it's direct to consumer, no dealerships.
I don't think I could ever buy a car through a dealer again. Honestly,
right?
Like that's I will if no other car company manages to do the experience of what Tesla has, like I'm just always going to buy a Tesla from now on.
I would,
not saying that they are the only one, but
I would agree. But I'm going to give props to a local dealer. I won't say the name, but I will give props to a local dealer I dealt with last week, who actually came very close to the Tesla experience. They still were a dealer, and they still had paper. You had the sign and all that. But I was in and out of there in an hour and a half with no upsell, no tacked on fees, no dealer fees, none of that crap. It was just, here's the car, here's the price. You want that? Great. Sign here, done.
Tesla was 5 minutes in my underwear at my house, right? Like you can't. An hour and a half at a place sounds awful.
Oh.
Sounds awful.
It sets the bar pretty high.
It did.
I tell you though, a couple of months ago when I went and test drove a bunch of vehicles, including the newer Model 3 and then also Porsche and Audi. The Porsche and Audi people, they called me back once. And I was, kind of said, well, I'll let you know or whatever. And they've never called me again. And Tesla's been texting me at least 5 times. So they've been sort of, in terms of the desperation, I've been feeling it more from Tesla.
Well, and that's a good point. I've dealt with a couple of EV manufacturers myself, looking around, poking things, and only Tesla called back. Only Tesla. I have not talked to a Rivian sales rep, so I'm not going to go there with Rivian. Everything's been just online. The dealer I dealt with last week actually called me back a couple times before, and they called me back twice afterwards to make sure everything was fine. I was happy with the deal. I mean,
yeah,
that's great. I mean, some of the dealers I think are learning. some are still stuck in the old ways. I ran into a few of those.
Yeah. It's a shame, to be honest, that not more companies have copied that aspect of the buying experience from
Yeah,
Tesla. And there's more
absolutely.
stuff on the list,
They,
right?
they can't.
It's true. True. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
but
you're
the
right,
wall-
right?
Like
But
they want to, right? Like even Ford said, we want to sell direct. We
Yes.
can't. We've got
Well-
100 years of dealership models and lobbies and
It's not even just
organizations that
direct.
won't
It's not even
legally let them do
just
it.
direct. I mean, it's the markup we were just talking about. I mean,
yes.
I went to a dealer and they had the car I liked, and they said, yeah, here's the price. No, by the way, here's $1,900 in dealer options that are non-negotiable that you have to take. I'm going, no, I don't have to take them, actually.
True.
I don't have to deal with you.
I think that part may not change just because it's how these places end up making money and paying the bills, unfortunately. But there's other stuff on the list of pros for Tesla, right? Mobile service, that's
Mobile service is
amazing.
awesome.
I
That
would
is
miss
awesome.
that. But at the same time, I'm trying to kind of come full circle and get your thoughts on a couple other items. But to me, it seems like it's really maybe the first time that Tesla is not limited by capacity and output, right? We've seen the sales numbers go down a little bit first time. And Doug, I'm sure you have them top of mind. I think it was maybe 10% year over year or something like that. But I'll let you give people the
Don't
correct
expect me to have
figures.
that. Don't expect me to
You
have that
may.
top of our mind. But
I think you
but,
may have it.
But
It was like
what I-
55% for the quarter or something. It was pretty extreme. Sales dropped in one quarter or something like
what
55%.
I'll say is, for the
yeah, that
longest
hurts.
time, Tesla, whether it was true or not, has always said we're supply limited. Like there's so much demand that we're supply limited, and that in the past that sometimes hasn't rung so true because their supply was, they had a lot of control over the supply, right? Or they were through their own trouble, they're having problems ramping up.
Yep.
And well, of course you're demand limited because your supply is so bad. But
Sorry, I want to give the real number just because I totally flipped it. It was
Yeah.
55% revenue drop. It was 13% sales drop, but revenue went down
Yeah.
55%. So
and that's because
that
they've
hurts.
been cutting their prices so much, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the margins have been gone down quite a bit. And in that earnings call, Elon emphasized, well, Tesla Energy, will be doing well, and they're basically predicting, we're between two major, how do you put it? But basically, times of selling vehicles, and so right now there's a valley, there's a slump here, there's a chasm that they have to cross, and it's the whole industry. It's funny how the rest of the auto manufacturers are saying, oh, well, we're back to hybrids, which I don't completely understand because I think EVs are cheaper as a bridge. Maybe hybrids make sense but perhaps it's new acquisitions, right? Existing EV owners already have EVs perhaps, and they're good with them, and it's the convincing of the existing ICE drivers to make that step. And I think hybrids are good training wheels, as they put it. So I don't know. It puts Toyota in a good position, right? Which is what they've been wanting forever, right? Is just to sell more of their hybrids and to slow down EVs. So anyway,
Well, one of the comments that just showed up, I saw a flash over the screen, was I didn't catch the user. They were commenting about interest constraints on buying cars right now. And I'll say this: in the last 2 weeks, Wendy, thank you. Now we're interest constrained. Yes and no. The last 2 weeks have been kind of interesting. If you've got good credit and you're careful shopping, I saw interest rates available to me everywhere from 1.9% to 13%, depending who you were talking to. It was a wide range.
well, that's interesting because the one thing Tesla, as far as I know, doesn't do yet is their own financing. So if GM has, what is it, GMAC or GMC or something like that.
GM,
they have their own financing arms.
Yeah, they do.
Pretty much,
they do.
Pretty much every major auto manufacturer has their own financing arm because it is another profit.
They make more money from that than selling the cars.
Yeah,
perhaps.
no kidding.
So Tesla isn't quite doing that yet, and maybe they haven't felt the need to do that. But yeah, if you're the one selling the car and you're making some money on that end, then it may behoove you to give someone interest rate when whatever the global interest rate now is, I guess 5 or something. If they can get away with 0% financing or 1% financing or whatever. But Tesla doesn't have that yet. So
yeah, the 1.9 I saw wasn't GM. It was a private consortium of dealers. And the hook was 3 years. You could only finance for 3 years. But 1.9 is pretty good. Not quite free money, to make money on pretty good.
Though, yeah, I'm not sure how they do it then if they're not already... if they don't already get, I mean, maybe they get, maybe they get a piece of the car too, of the cost of the car.
No idea.
Profits with if they're
the
dealer, right?
It surprised me, to say the least, because the typical that I've seen in the last 2 weeks was anywhere from 5 to 7. That seemed to be the sweet spot. The 13 was obscene. That was just a dealer out of control, but that's pretty nuts.
I feel like we're on with Dave Ramsey right now.
The last 2 weeks have been pretty enlightening. I'll say that.
So the interesting thing, I think these are all valid points. Thing to keep in mind is even though the economy is what it is and interest rates are what they are, the U.S. auto sales market for Q1 did go up, right? So it went up like 5 or 6%. Year over year or something for the quarter. It was 5.1%. It looks like. Now a lot of folks didn't do well. So certain I think GM fell and a couple others went down. Toyota though went up a lot. I think they went up. They went up like 20% or something sales on the quarter. So there's definitely still winners and losers. And I think the EV market is probably taking it hard compared to most because of whatever, the public is fickle and a lot of people don't understand how great EVs are. They just haven't experienced it. So I don't know. But anyway, I think, Tesla's they have a lot of levers to pull. So even though things are looking down right now, I don't expect them to stay down. But who knows? I mean, none of us can predict the future.
Yeah, very true. Well, I mean, just looking at the earnings and everything going on in the industry, it does seem a little bit like Tesla knew they were going to report not the best news, right? We had 10% layoffs. We had this new Cybercab topic that they all of a sudden brought up. It seemed like they were kind of reaching for a couple of things they could present to get people excited again, right? Get the numbers juiced. It was kind of crazy to see the stock surge in after hours.
The stock did juice. I mean, stock juiced.
It was up like 10 or 12% in after hours. But I guess we'll see how much of this actually does materialize. There was some interesting news, though, that I'd love to get your thoughts on, which is that Boston showed off Atlas, right? And Doug, I think you know a little bit more about the specifics. But what does that mean for Optimus? Like, Tesla didn't really talk about that, right, recently?
Well, Tesla did mention Optimus in the earnings call, and that I think he might have said this will be the thing that they'll be selling, tons of Optimus, and that will make a ton of money.
I think he basically said it's bigger than eventually it'll be bigger than cars, right? Like it's going to be way bigger than automotive as a sector.
And that's believable. And I wouldn't put it past Tesla to sell Optimus with limited function and then promise software updates that will make it do better later. I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla sold the thing and it basically just kind of walk from one room to the next room and then do nothing else, or just be like a security thing, just send like security sentry mode type images to your phone, and then eventually there'll be the folding laundry update, and that sort of thing.
And that's when I'll buy one.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla does get if they design it for manufacturing and get out the door, and there'll be plenty of people to buy it. I mean, people bought the flamethrower, and there are people buying that ridiculous sledgehammer and whatnot. So I wouldn't be surprised. But the Atlas thing is pretty interesting to me because they've been working on these things for a while. Let's see. They did put out a video. What's funny is the timing. So they put out a video of, the farewell to HD Atlas, and people weren't quite sure what HD meant. But I think what we figure out is HD probably meant hydraulically driven Atlas. And we've seen over the years that robot being very nimble, like doing things like doing flips and all this other stuff. And they've been working on this stuff for years, at least 20 years, starting with a single sort of pogo bot that could just sort of bounce around, that was restricted to like bouncing around in a radius, to then being able to move all XY. And then, this Atlas, which is, like a bipedal robot that takes some abuse. But this thing is all run hydraulically. And in this video, I mean, you could really feel it. Like it does some flip, and then you see the hydraulics burst out its knee. And it's just so rough. And
I just cringe when I see that.
Yeah, because I can feel it. I mean, I've been doing, martial arts for some time, and I haven't had any serious injuries, but I've seen people do something and then blow out an ACL or whatever. And that's what I feel from this robot. And when BostonDynamics put out this video, it's kind of funny because again on Twitter or X, you would see these comments of like, well, they're throwing in the towel. Optimus is won. Apparently BostonDynamics is giving up. Right. Lewis, you're
I was muted. Sorry. I was gonna say, for anybody that knows BostonDynamics though and understands that they've literally been doing this since the 90s and goes even back before that in labs in MIT, like what? They don't. Right. They wouldn't be giving. What? That's such a ridiculous thing to say. But anyway, they actually have customers. They ship their product. Anyway.
That's definitely a fanboy thing to say. But one question I do have is when I see these videos, and I've been watching them like for a long time, it's amazing. I mean, that stuff is incredible. So I don't see them at my local Whole Foods bagging groceries, right? Like, is this mostly a military application, or are they just sold in low numbers? I just don't understand why Tesla would think the market for Optimus is so large if I don't see these robots anywhere yet.
They're thinking of iRobot is the problem. They're thinking of there's one in every person's home on the planet, and it's like a caretaker and a cook, and it does your like all that stuff. But we are years and years and years and years away from that, not just because of software, but also hardware, right? It's a complex problem on both sides. The reason you don't see BostonDynamics robots at your supermarket or other things is because guess what? If they're expensive as hell. They're way more than a person. So they're mostly doing jobs that are high risk and considered too dangerous for like loss of life. So they use them in like power plants and, doing like switching of like high voltage, connectors and things like that. The other thing is like their battery supply, right? And how long they can run without being hooked in, plugged into power and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the first vehicles were running off of gas generators, right?
Exactly.
So loud, right?
So I mean,
enough energy.
They use them and they sell them in industrial applications. But to be honest, as we've talked about in previous episodes, guess what? A humanoid robot is not the best form factor for most industrial, like for most work, period. It's a phenomenal form factor for being general purpose and like in our human built world, because obviously that's our bipedal form factor. But guess what? Factories have shit tons of robots. They're arms or they're, like things that like move up and down as like conveyor belts and all that kind of stuff. We have tons of robots. A general purpose bipedal robot while cool and I love it and it's sci-fi and I want to own one and I want one in my house, we're so far away from the tech being there to be good in your house. That's why, while I agree with Elon, Optimus could be a bigger business and would be amazing and I will totally buy one. They're honestly, in my opinion, more on the order of decades away from that being realistic as opposed to years away. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'm not so sure it's that far away. I think as soon as Tesla is able to, and Tesla will do this, I think, as soon as they're able to like make it cheap enough, if you can buy it for $20K, or even the cost of a car, say it's,
but it's not going to do anything.
Tesla won't need it to do anything.
That's fair.
Tesla will sell it and it will just walk around and do nothing. And then everything will be a software update.
The fanboys will buy it.
I say it's more than a decade away to being useful. How about that?
Okay. That's reasonable.
But you're right. They'll probably sell them way before then.
Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm getting a.
Do you want to play the other video? This is the goodbye video. We also had the.
Yeah, let's show the new one.
So basically, what Doug was talking about earlier, right, was essentially they published a video saying, "Hey, goodbye, Atlas," and everyone's like, "Oh, they're done. They're closing shop." And then, of course, the next day they released this, which is basically a video on the new Atlas, which is no longer hydraulically driven now. It's electric. So you can see it's got definitely got some Terminator vibes. It's not quite
just a few.
It's just like, oh, it definitely gives you that vibe of, Terminator, where he's against the wall and then his head like reforms in the other direction.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not as cool as liquid metal, but that's not really possible with physics as we know it. Anyway, it's kind of neat though. So essentially, Boston Dynamics has moved over to, going with a fully electric driven, or I shouldn't say they're not doing hydraulic anymore. They're just not working on hydraulic Atlas anymore, according to what they're saying. And so this looks closer to being a competitor to Optimus, but I don't know that that's necessarily their intent. I think the technology has gotten there. The batteries have gotten there. It probably makes sense to move to electric. Hydraulic made a lot of sense back when they started. So I don't know, but I'm happy to see there's competition. I'm happy to see there's another, there's now more electric drive research being done, more, bipedal robots being worked on. It's exciting stuff. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they end up coming up with soon. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I would say, again, it was funny, like, Boston Dynamics did that, Atlas is going away video. And then the next day they release this video. And then the sort of, I would guess, overly Tesla oriented fans were like, well, it's too creepy. And its hands look like claws. It doesn't have the dexterity that Optimus will have. Maybe. I think it looks pretty cool actually. And I think if you're going to have a bipedal robot, it should be superhuman in terms of doing things that a human can't do. And also, if you look at the way it gets up, it just makes perfect sense that it plants its feet. If it can flip its feet around like that, it plants its feet close to the center of mass and just comes up. Instead of like, how does a human get up? Oh, they got to put your arm out to the side. And watching a human getting up from a lying down position is kind of weird and awkward.
You do a kip on, obviously, right?
Yeah,
you got a six pack and you just flip yourself up.
I bet you this could do that. I mean, the hydraulic Atlas did that itself.
Right.
So anyway, I think it looks cool. I think the fact that it can rotate its body around in a more dynamic way makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, so I'm all for it. And actually, like, how many jobs really need that fine manual finger dexterity that humans have, right? If a robot is supposed to replace the 3Ds, the dull, dangerous, and dirty jobs, how many of those jobs are like, do you need it to play the piano? Do you need it to play the violin? Those aren't the dull, dangerous, dirty ones. I'm having a hard time thinking of which job that fit in those categories really required that kind of dexterity. So I don't know about you guys.
No, I agree. I think the human-like dexterity in a bipedal robot is more about the sci-fi nature and the like being cool factor. So like I totally get it. And yes, in theory, if you could do it well, why not? It's just it adds a lot of complexity and cost to something that is so much easier to do without it. And even is not as good as many other things, right? Like how many even, sci-fi movies and games and books or whatever they'll have like attachments and things, right? They're not using a 5-finger human-like hand. Even folks that have prosthetics do that, right? Even humans that have prosthetic limbs have attachments that they will switch to because it's more efficient and more effective at doing things.
Snap it on, snap it off.
So I feel like that's probably the direction they'll go. And I honestly feel like Optimus will eventually be in that same boat, right? It'll just make sense to where you have a replaceable, appendage that you can do different things with. But yeah, anyway, Boston Dynamics, they seem to be much more focused on, they have customers that are buying their robots. So they know they have market demand. They know the things that they need to work on for their particular market segments. Tesla's working on cool and sci-fi and futuristic, which is all great stuff. Love all that stuff. Keep doing it. Keep working on those things. I want to buy one. But they're not targeting the exact same market in that regard. Certainly not now. I think 5 years from now, maybe that'll change. Maybe they'll be bumping into each other. But it's cool stuff either way, in my opinion.
Well said, Lewis. I think one thing I hadn't considered really is the difference in having something that's general purpose versus having very specific applications, right? Mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, whatever it's going to be in like 20 years. But, guys, I think interesting topics today. I would love to drive the Model 3 Performance once that's hitting dealerships. But for today, I'd say it's a wrap. Thanks to our producer, Danny. And thanks, everybody, for joining. If you would like to follow us, you can do so on Twitter and YouTube. If you'd like to support the show, please consider becoming a supporting member. And, of course, you can join us on the Tesla Motors Club website. All right. See you guys next time.
Thank you.
Laters.